So should we make a start? All right, so Fáilte gach duine, you're very welcome here to join us today as we launch this document, Protecting Irish Neutrality. This document is timely, is essential indeed for the times that we are in, given the international context and also the ongoing efforts of the Fianna Fáil Fine Gael government to dispense with the triple lock protection and weaken and abandon Irish neutrality. This document is being launched by us today, and it is part of a wider campaign which will see Sinn Féin host public meetings and engagements all across the country. And my colleague Lynn Boylan, MEP, will make some remarks on that later on. How we will proceed is I'll make some opening comments along with Donnacha O'Leary, Rose Conway-Walsh, and then Lynn, and then we'll take your questions. And I know there'll be questions on wider issues, but if we can deal with the issue of neutrality first, that would be really great. Sinn Féin believe that neutrality is a strategic strength for Ireland. We believe that it allows us to stand for peace, for diplomacy, and for international law in an increasingly dangerous world. We believe that Ireland and the Irish government must be strong on neutrality and strong on defence. Indeed, the horrific scenes in Lebanon in recent days have shocked the conscience of the world, underlining again that the Middle East, due to the actions of the US and Israel, stands on the brink of a much wider war. And it's at moments like this that Ireland has to be absolutely clear that we are neutral and that we will not be dragged into the wars of others. We believe that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have to come clean on their position. Irish airspace and airports, including Shannon, cannot and should not be used directly or indirectly to facilitate military operations, because Irish neutrality has to mean something. Their attempts by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael to dismantle the triple lock would represent a fundamental and a dangerous shift in Ireland's foreign policy. The triple lock is a core protection of our neutrality, ensuring that Irish troops can't be deployed overseas as part of an international mission without a UN mandate. And Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael want to remove this requirement. We will oppose that tooth and nail, because, as I have said, neutrality is a strength, allowing us to stand for peace, diplomacy and international law. And we believe that the UN system and the rules-based system should be defended and resourced and strengthened. It should not be undermined, much less abandoned, as is the intent of too many. Our defence forces clearly require investment, and they require resourcing. And Donnacha will say some words on that. So the document that we're launching today sets out our plan to protect the triple lock, to enshrine neutrality in Bunreacht na hÉireann, to invest in the defence forces, to oppose moves towards an EU military framework, and to strengthen, crucially, Ireland's role in peace building and diplomacy. We have a very, very proud tradition in Ireland of non-alignment and military neutrality, and we believe this is a strength, particularly now. We believe that it's something that Irish people are proud of, and I suppose, to use those words first that appeared outside Liberty Hall and echoed by James Connolly, we serve neither king nor Kaiser but Ireland. We believe that the Irish people retain a strong attachment and value in our military neutrality. If Micheál Martin and Simon Harris have the courage of their convictions, let them put their plan to abandon the triple lock to the Irish people, and we believe that they would get their answer loud and clear, and that answer would be hands off Irish neutrality.
Cumagad agus cumagad goléir as féin seo, tá mé seola an policy an seo nódrachas go mór mhór ag féchant an slígúil an réaltas géirí dearachar leis an glas tríarach ach in éanaach leis sin caint faoi an slígúil an nódrachas mar gné dearfach de policy gnóthaí eachtracha an Stát. Neutrality is the right policy for Ireland. Of that we are absolutely certain and we are passionate and we are deeply concerned about the government's proposals to end the triple lock, and it is to end the triple lock, and the risks that we believe that contains for Irish neutrality. We believe that an Irish government, that Ireland should be strong on neutrality and strong on defence. There is nothing in the triple lock that prevents investment in our defence forces. In fact, it is successive Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael governments who have neglected the defence forces. Neutrality is the wise policy, it is the sensible policy, it is the policy that ensures that Ireland can use and exert its influence internationally to the greatest extent possible. In my view, in Sinn Féin's view, it is reckless, it is short-sighted and it is complacent for the government to risk the strengths that we have achieved in terms of our independent foreign policy by ending the triple lock and undermining our neutrality. We believe that that is based on short-term political considerations and fails to take the longer view of what is in Ireland's interests. People constantly say in recent times that the world is changing, and undoubtedly the world is changing. We have had a genocide in Gaza, we have the escalating war in Lebanon and the appalling sights that we saw yesterday, the tensions in various Middle Eastern countries, in Yemen and so on, the war in Iran, the illegal invasion of Ukraine. Undoubtedly the world is now more volatile than it was a number of years ago. But the question for Ireland is, where does Ireland stand in that changed world? Ireland has, and this has been widely acknowledged across the political spectrum, has punched above its weight. And you could overstate this. Ireland is a small country, but relative to our size, we have punched above our weight internationally. We need to ask why that is. There are a number of reasons. We have connections of language and history and family with Britain, with the United States, with Australia and so on, but we also have connections in terms of our history as a state, as a country that was colonised, and that allows us connections right across the world, including the developing world, that other European countries don't. If we, for the sake of short-term political considerations, allow Irish personnel to be deployed outside of UN mandate for missions of what kind we do not know, for deployments that the government has been entirely unspecific about, what prevents them from, what are the missions that they're currently prevented from undertaking, then I believe that we are potentially putting Ireland's reputation at risk and potentially undermining that unique place that we have. We believe neutrality is a positive thing as well. It's not simply a static position. It's about arguing for diplomacy, promoting the multilateral system and insisting on the application of international law. The document is a comprehensive statement of our analysis of the benefits and the necessity of neutrality as a policy for Ireland. And I suppose it outlines the fact that it can't simply be just a static position. It should be a positive good, a positive strength for Ireland, but also seeking to be a positive influence on the international agenda. And there is precedent for that, and there is a history of that for the Irish state to be speaking out on the side of justice. Currently, the multilateral system is being attacked, particularly by the United States, but also right across the board. And I think a lot of people would have acknowledged Mark Carney's speech. We need, and in my view, the attempts by the government to undermine the triple lock is playing into that. For all that Micheál Martin talks about the necessity of the multilateral system, trying to undermine the UN by getting rid of the necessity for a UN mandate, in my view, undermines that. The example of our peace process, which is heralded internationally, underlines the strengths that we potentially have in arguing for peace, for diplomacy internationally. We talk about the legacy of our peacekeepers. We are extremely proud, and I think the Irish public are extremely proud of the legacy of Irish peacekeepers for decades now, and we pay tribute and show our solidarity to those who are resolutely undertaking their duty in Lebanon, and we send our solidarity to them. We're very proud of them. We're rightly proud of them. They've distinguished themselves in recent decades. It's important that we build on that, going outside of UN missions, going outside of deployments such as that for, as I say, missions that we do not know what the government has in mind, potentially undermines that. My colleague, MEP for Dublin, Lynn Boylan, will speak about issues in relation to Europe, but there is a clear agenda at play in Europe that needs to be addressed as well, and legislative instruments that even the European Parliament is pushing back on because it's going beyond the powers there. In relation to the triple lock, it's very clear, and it was very clear through the committee hearings, and I know the Chair of the Justice and the Defence and National Security Committee, Rose Conway-Walsh, will touch on that as well. A number of things came through very clearly. It is evident that it will be possible for a future Irish government to deploy Irish troops, where they have a majority, to any situation that they wish. There is no further constraint on that beyond anything that is evaluated by that self-same government that wishes to deploy. We also learned very clearly that a lot of the kind of examples that have been given by government in terms of humanitarian evacuations, in terms of rescue missions, including and drug interdiction, none of these are prevented by the triple lock. So in our view, it is rash, it is wrong, it is careless to try and get rid of that. And then finally, it was very clear, very evident during the course of those hearings, there is nothing in the triple lock that prevents us, and different parties will have different policies as to how to approach it, but nothing in the triple lock prevents us from ensuring that we have adequate investment in our defence forces, that we have adequate monitoring in our seas and our skies, and ability to intervene where required. There is nothing in the triple lock that prevents that whatsoever, and I know my colleague will touch on that as well. So we very passionately believe that this is the right policy for Ireland. Ireland should be strong on neutrality, strong on defence. I think the Irish public are very clear on that as well. And increasingly, I think you will see a campaign building up on this. I know the Irish Neutrality League have a march on the 18th at 1 p.m, something that Sinn Féin will be supporting that particular march. We're hosting a series of public events across the state because I do believe that the pressure on government on this issue will build up. You look at any of the opinion polls, the Irish people support neutrality. They support keeping the triple lock because they understand that it is important for Ireland to have an independent foreign policy, that this is a cornerstone of our independent foreign policy, and that this is the best way for Ireland to ensure that we can maximise our influence on the international stage and stand up for what's right in the world.
Okay. Garma Donica, and first at the outset, I suppose as Chair of the Defence and National Security Committee, I do want to commend our Defence Forces, our Air Corps, our Navy and our Army, and our thoughts are particularly with those who are serving in Lebanon today as we speak, and with their families. And just maybe to say on that, we have asked as a committee for a briefing on that from the department, so we're hoping to get that briefing in the next week to obviously reassure us that everything possible is being done and they're being given all the resources and the help that they need in Lebanon. So just to talk maybe for a moment in terms of the triple lock and us having done the pre-leg scrutiny on the triple lock within the committee, there were some things that were very clear to us. And I suppose the first thing that was very clear to us was that, and the question that kept arising for us was, particularly in relation to the Taoiseach, in how in 2014 the triple lock was to the core of our neutrality. It was the core of our neutrality, and now suddenly it's not. And obviously that is of concern to us as a committee, and it's a concern, I think, to the Irish people. As Donica has said, and I think it's important to note that the current rules for deployment of unlimited numbers of the Defence Force members is far and wide. Firstly, in terms of secondments to international organisations, to participating in training, to carrying out ceremonial duties, to participating in exchanges, to undertaking visits, to fact-finding missions, and to undertaking humanitarian tasks in response to an actual or potential disasters or emergencies. Because I think the impression sometimes can be given that our hands are really tied with the triple lock. In many instances, they are not tied at all. We can participate in sporting events, we can do inspecting and evaluating of stores, of equipment, of facilities. So there's a whole lot there that can be done, and certainly that needs to be done. Now, the government need to state as well What missions do they want to partake in that they cannot do with the triple lock? We have never had an answer to that. And I think it has never been a more important time for us to be neutral and to be neutrally recognised, explicitly recognised within the EU as a neutral country. So that's probably all I'll say, other than to say that we're still waiting for the national security strategy. It's very, very important that we have that. And I think, to reiterate what Donncha has said, there's consensus across the committee in terms of the resources and the investment that needs to be put into our defence forces. We have to address years, if not decades, of neglect of our defence forces, and we're doing that. And certainly, as chair of the Defence and National Security, that's a job I take very serious. I would just mention finally, in terms of our request for extension of remit of that committee to enable us to be able to do our national security element properly. We're very mindful that we have the EU presidency coming up. There's a lot of concerns around different areas of that, but we need oversight, we need accountability, and we need transparency, and that's what we will continue to seek within the committee, and that's certainly what I will continue to seek as chair of that committee.
I'll be brief, but I suppose just to echo what my colleagues have said in terms of the triple lock and how important and intrinsic it is to our neutrality. In fact, it creates a firewall or an insulation for us in an EU that's becoming increasingly militaristic in its outlook, but also it's a commission that, under President von der Leyen, that has completely undermined what the founding principles of the EU was, which was a peace project. She has acted a number of times outside of her mandate and spoken on foreign affairs, whether that was to travel to Tel Aviv to stand shoulder to shoulder with Benjamin Netanyahu, or more recently some of her comments on Iran. So the triple lock allows the Irish government to go into a European Council and remind the EU that the EU and NATO are not one and the same thing, that nothing is stopping EU countries from doing their militaristic agenda through NATO, but that the EU is at its core a peace project. That's what the Irish people have voted for repeatedly in treaties, and that's where the triple lock gives us that protection when we're at those council meetings. I believe as well that in terms of Ursula von der Leyen's mandate, it's very significant that she is actually being taken to court herself by the European institutions for acting outside of the treaty. So at a time when we're seeing international law undermined, we have a president of the Commission that doesn't respect her own treaties, and that is under the SAFE regulation, which is a €150 billion instrument to support member states investing in defence, but she has bypassed the institutions in order to do that and is currently facing court proceedings by her own institutions for her actions. So as I said, at this time, the triple lock provides the Irish government with the insulation, with the firewall that it needs when it goes into those council meetings, and to show that leadership that is much needed at the moment in terms of setting out an alternative vision, and that's one of peace building and diplomacy and not one of sabre rattling. I also think that we are with the Irish people on this. The Irish people are incredibly proud of their sovereignty, and regardless of lots of commentary around neutrality, we see in repeated polls that the Irish people are deeply proud of the position of neutrality, and that is why Sinn Féin are happy to launch its own campaign in neutrality with a range of regional meetings across the country. The first will be in East Wall on Friday night in the Sean O'Casey Centre, but there's also going to be regional meetings in Galway, Meath, Waterford and Kildare, and then also Sinn Féin are part of that neutrality league, and we would be encouraging the members of the public to come out onto the streets on the 18th of April and show your support for neutrality, and demand that if the government are so convinced of their arguments, then they need to put that to the people.